the inspirational leader finds something good in everyone. Because everyone makes a difference in one way or another. It can be difficult to make somebody feel important if the job they do is quite routine, quite mundane, and there aren't any moments where they do something great. There might not even be anything you can really thank them for apart from consistency. So what can you do? And I would like to suggest you can always find something good that you can tell somebody that they've done. And I want to give you an example, a story about a guy who worked for me and how I managed to find something good that I could thank him for. When I was first starting out as a manager, I was about probably 25, and I think it was actually my second management job. And I was in charge of this machine shop, and there were about 30 people operating these machines. And I'd read somewhere that you should do management by walking about. So each day I would walk around and just see how everything was going on, just check people were happy and there were no problems. And that was great. But there was a guy at the far end of the machine shop who was making washers on a capstan lathe. So you just have this bar and you drill a hole and you cut pieces off and you just make washers. And he was making thousands of washers every day. That's all he did. It's a really boring job, I think, probably. But he was good at it and that was all he did. And he was called Jack and he was from Yorkshire. So every now and then I would go past Jack and say, "Morning, Jack," and he'd go, and I think that might be Yorkshire for, who do you think you are? And I look back actually and I kind of cringe of what must Jack have thought of me? Because he was about 60 and he'd been there battle hardened, he'd been there for years. And along comes this 25-year-old whippersnapper in a suit from university who thinks he knows everything. And I can totally understand why Jack would have thought I was a waste of space. And you could see it on his face. He would sort of sneer at me and just go, "Ugh." So quite often I would avoid even talking to him because it was always humiliating. But occasionally I'd go, "Morning, Jack," and he'd go, "Ugh." And then I read in a book, I think it was in the 1 Minute Manager, it said, catch them doing something right, find something good and tell them. And I remember thinking, I could do that for Jack, but on the other hand, what can I say? All he does is make washers. Well done, Jack, for making some more washers. Or, "Ooh, I wish I was as good as you are at making washers." I can't say that to him. That would be awful. So I just sort of left him really to stew at the far end of the machine shop. And then one day I was looking at the production report. So we used to get this computer printout and it would list all the machines, all the operators, and how fast they were, and how much scrap and rework they'd had. So usually there was a percentage for the sort of speed of, are they 90% of target or 110%? And then the other two columns, they would usually scrap about 2 or 3% of what they had made. That's where it just gets rejected at inspection and thrown away. And usually about 10% went back for rework and had to have extra work done. So I was just looking at this report. I never really read the report. I couldn't see the point of it, but I was just scanning down the report. And there the numbers were sort of 3% scrap and 8% rework or whatever. And one of the lines was just 0 and 0. And I thought, what? How can it be 0? And I looked, who is this person? And of course it was Jack. So for the previous week, he had not had a single washer rejected for rework or scrap. Every one he'd made 10,000 washers. Every one was perfect. He was a bit slower than average because he was fussy, but nevertheless, really impressive. So I looked at the previous week, also 0. And I went back through all these weeks. He'd never had anything scrapped. I went back several months. Nothing scrapped or reworked. What a guy. So I thought, I've got him. So the next day I was doing my walking around. And as I went past Jack, I went, "Morning, Jack." And he went, "Ugh." And then after I'd gone past, I sort of turned around, a bit like Columbo. Do you remember that detective who always said, "Oh, by the way"? And I said, "Oh, by the way, I was looking at the production report yesterday," and you could see him start to bristle slightly because he thought I was going to accuse him of being slow, which he was. And I said, "I was looking at the production report, and I couldn't help noticing that you've had nothing scrapped or reworked, not just last week, but for the last few months. I've looked all the way back. You've never had a single part rejected. And I think that's amazing. That's fantastic." And he said, "Oh, well, the youth of today, they don't understand quality." And I said to him, "I know. I wish they were all like you, because that's fantastic. And carry on. But you are a bit slow." No, I didn't say that, because that would have ruined it, wouldn't it? So I just said, "It's brilliant. I love it. Carry on. Thanks, Jack. You've done a brilliant job." And I walked away. And it was really interesting to see his reaction to all this, because partly he was really pleased that at last he'd had some recognition, he'd been noticed and he'd had some thanks. At last, some bloke in a suit had actually noticed Jack. So I think he really liked it, but I don't think he liked the fact that it was me, because I know he didn't really like me, and that was fine. But I think overall, it made him happy. because he'd been noticed. So I then had a sort of begrudging relationship with Jack where I'd say, all right, Jack, everything good? He'd go, or I'd say, scrapped anything today? And he'd go, no. And I was going, I'm just checking. And I hope he was happy about the fact that I appreciated him, because I genuinely did, and I told him I did. And I hope that that added a little bit to his job satisfaction and his feeling of being worthwhile in what he did. And it was easy enough to do. And I think it's a fascinating game to try to find something good. Even the guy who does a routine job, nothing very exciting ever, there's always something you can find that's good. So for the people who work for you, have you found something good for every single one of those people?